If you are new to our channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button.
Greg Key is from Norman Park, Georgia, and in 2009 founded the Haas Tool Company after seeing that tools he found in the local hardware store didn't really meet the needs of market gardener or home gardeners. And Haas Tools of HaasTools.com, was knowledgeable about growing all types of vegetables. He's going to help us northern gardeners with some tips and techniques that southern gardeners know.
Welcome to the program, Greg.
Well, thank you very much. Glad to be here.
Well, we love to bring people on the program who are much more knowledgeable. That's what this program is all about, to help all of us learn how to grow vegetables and fruits successfully.
Well, good deal. That's what we're all about. We're about making things easy and helping people grow their own food.
Now, it is all about the soil when it comes to gardening for us specifically and for most of our listeners. What and how do you prepare your soil? What's the best way if you have clay soil?
Well, we actually have a sandy loam soil, so we have a topsoil that's kind of blackish, but it's very fluffy and it has a lot of sand in it. So it's pretty easy to work, and we don't have that much problem. But we do have a lot of people that have clay-type soils, and clay-type soils have their benefits. Clay soils have a very high cation exchange value, and what that means is they simply hold nutrients a lot better than the sandy soils that we have. However, they can be hard to work. So we always recommend people to add as much organic matter as you can to those clay soils to improve the tilth. And the tilth simply means the structure of the soil. So we want to improve that clay soil so that we can work it. Now, clay soils are great because they don't take near the amount of nutrients that we have to apply to our sandy soils. Matter of fact, clay soils take about half the amount of nutrients that our soils take. So they have a charge that holds those nutrients really good, and you can grow a great garden in clay-type soils. You have a problem with water. They don't drain as well as our sandy-type soils do. But once you improve it with those organic matter and get it so that you can work it, you can grow a lot of great produce, vegetables, and fruits in clay soils.
Well, let's talk about a fruit that many people love to grow and do not have very much success which is watermelon. What is your keys to growing great watermelon? Because on your videos, on your website, you grow great watermelons. How can we do that?
Well, it's funny you should ask that. We actually live in the watermelon capital of the world, and we love to grow watermelons in our garden. That's one of our favorite things we like to grow. But up north, they can be challenging, and one reason is they take 80 days to get to maturity, so it can be a long crop. And we know you guys up north don't have a very long summer, so one thing that I would recommend doing is starting those plants inside and get those plants up to pretty good size and transplant them. And that will shorten your growing season and give you a head start so that you can get them out there a little bit quicker and get them up and get them off to maturity before the cold sets in. Now, normally you need to wait about 70 degrees to plant. So if you do those transplants inside and when the weather gets right and you go out there and plant them, you can probably shave off anywhere from 3 to 4 weeks then growing them by seed. Another thing is don't try to grow any of the hybrids or the seedless varieties. That really gets complicated. Leave that to the professional farmer. Try to grow some of these heirlooms because they're a lot easier to grow and they're a lot more forgiving. The one we grow is one called Crimson Sweet. But my friend Jared that owns Baker Creek Company really raised about an orange glow variety, and it has an orange meat in it, and it's really good for the home gardener. I've grown it before too. It's got a really good flavor, but it doesn't have a really thick rind, so it doesn't ship well. So it's not one that a farmer would want to grow, but from a home gardener standpoint, it's a great one to grow. So any of the heirloom varieties is going to be a lot more forgiving.
Well, thank you. And here in the north, now is the time for us to plant asparagus. We've never grown asparagus. What do our listeners need to know about it to make sure we can have a great crop?
Well, first thing, you need a lot of patience because asparagus takes 3 years before you can start harvesting it. 3 years is a long time to baby something along, but that's what you got to do. You got to create a great root system there so that you can start harvesting asparagus on the 3rd year. Now, asparagus being a perennial, it has some problems with weeds. So that's one of the biggest problems with asparagus is weeds. And what we use is we use a combination of drip irrigation so we can water exactly where the asparagus is at, and we don't try not to water the weeds. And also we use compost as a mulch, and we use wheat straw as a mulch, and that helps keep our weed problem down so that our asparagus can flourish. So having irrigation underneath there so we're not watering everything, good compost, and good wheat straw is probably some of the keys. And there again, you need a lot of patience growing asparagus. But it is one of those crops that just keeps on giving. I mean, you can easily get 10 to 15 years out of asparagus, and it's one of our favorite things that we grow.
Well, you talked about weeds and weeding, and that's a common conversation that we have here on the program. Some people, and we found this to be true in our garden, if we leave some weeds in the garden, some of those bad insects, aphids, for example, will attach themselves to those weeds and not our plants in which we're trying to grow. What are some other things that we need to know about weeds and how to deal with them? You talked about mulching with the asparagus there.
Yeah, well, in a vegetable garden situation, the key to weeding is getting them while they're small. Once they get up and get ahead of you, it's hard to control them. So we advocate staying out there in the garden and staying on top of it. So when those weeds are small, they're very easy to go out there and you can cultivate and you can get them out of the way. Another thing with soils is after you get a rain and those soils become a little bit compacted, that is when your weed seeds start to germinate. Weed seed will not germinate in cultivated soils. So anytime you have a pretty good rain and your soil is kind of beat down and compacted, you want to go out there and cultivate those soils and fluff them up. And when you do that, that keeps that weed seed from germinating and staying on top of them when they're small. So, you really need to go out there. We go every day, but I recommend going at least once every day or two and just getting your hoe out or whatever your favorite cultivating tool is and go through there. And if you see a weed, whack it while it's small because it's a lot easier to control then than after it gets up.
And I want to go back on that and kind of go more of the science of it. You're disturbing you're fluffing the soil up because the roots or the seed it has too many air pockets to germinate correctly. Is that what you're kind of referring to? Okay.
Exactly. When you take that ideal condition away from that weed seed to germinate, then it's not going to germinate. And that's what we want to do is we want to make that soil fluffy so it doesn't have a very compacted and it don't have a lot of moisture hitting that weed seed, so it won't germinate.
Now, so contaminated compost, any compost, no matter where you get it, free or bought, you can't look at it and say, it looks good. What do we need to know when we're getting compost?
Well, compost is one of those magical ingredients for us. It can make you look like a hero. Compost is wonderful when it's done right. The problem we've had in the last few years is there is some synthetic chemicals out there that can get into the compost and cause some major problems. One of them is a lawn chemical that a lot of your lawn companies will spray on the grass and things, and it's called chlorpyrrolid. That's the active ingredient in a chemical called lawn trail that's used a lot in the lawn care industry. And it has a very long residual. So if you take those grass clippings that has been treated with this chemical called chlorpyrrolid and you compost it, it can actually live throughout that process and give damage to your garden. There's another one called picloram that's used in the ag industry and is sprayed on a lot of pastures and hay fields. So if you get compost that has materials made that has been sprayed or treated with these two chemicals, you can very easily have some contaminated compost. And that can cause some huge problems in your garden. And plants of the nightshade family are more susceptible to these chemicals than any others. So you're going to see your potatoes and your tomatoes start showing damage first. And they normally start with a cupping effect of the leaf, and that cupping will be upwards. So that leaf will cup upwards, and when you see that, that's a sign that you've got some type of pesticide injury to your plant, whether it be drip from somewhere else or if you have used compost, you definitely want to make sure that it's free of those compounds so that you don't get this type of damage because it can be very discouraging.
Well, you're the founder of Haas Tools. What are like 2 recommended tools that you would say if a gardener says, I want 2 tools, what would you say that they need to have from the HaasTool.com website?
Well, if you're growing a pretty good-sized vegetable garden, say like a 20 by 50 or 20 by 20, something like that, and you're growing it flat, the wheel hoe has got to be the got-to-have tool. This tool has been around for over 100 years, and it's been proven over and over again. And basically what it is, it's just a hoe on wheels. But there's all kind of attachments you could put on there to do anything from laying drip tape to weeding your garden, to making a fur, to hilling your potatoes, to hilling your corn. And that's probably the most versatile tool for somebody that's growing a decent-sized vegetable garden. Now, for the person that's just growing in raised beds or an urban gardener, we have a guy that's a blacksmith in Missouri that makes this tool for us. We call it the single-tine cultivator. And it's a small tool that could easily get in between the plants and in those tight places to weed. Because most of the time, that's where we have our problem at, is in between the plants and those tight places. And this single-tine cultivator is handmade in Missouri, and it's heat-treated. And it's easy to get in those cracks and crevices and get in those hard-to-reach hard-to-reach weeds.
Well, thank you very much, Greg. We appreciate you coming on, and we got some great information.
Thank you for checking out the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener radio show. For more, go to the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com for full length in-studio video and podcast replay of Season 1. Season 2 underway and added weekly. Tweet us at TWVG Show or hashtag TWVG to be part of the program.